We come from different regions, though. So if I say, with knowledge of self, and I talk about a student, and I say, this student of mine is Black American, this student of mine is Jamaican, this student of mine is coming from Trinidad, or whatever, right? Or a couple students I have now. I have a student that's from South Africa, right? When the student is from these different places, it's very, very important that you know where they're from. You know that the context that they come from, the biases that they may have been taught, the things that they may not have been taught. Like if I have a student, right, and he's a black student, and I just assume, we're all black. And I just assume. And I don't ask him where he's from. I ask every student where they're from, their ethnicities. If he comes from a different place, and he's not Black American, though looks Black American, then I have to find out, though, what his histories is. Because if he's 85, he may not even know the history of his own people. You know what I mean? So how is he going to take a leapfrog backward into Kemet? And he doesn't even know the country that he immediately was emigrated from. This is important. You know what I'm saying? So when you say stuff like we have to stop saying African American or other names you got, knowledge, we are no longer anything else other than black. We know the knowledge of self. But this is an educative moment. This is a classroom. And we have real experiences that come in real places, though. And we have to understand that the different peoples that have been indoctrinated differently in different places. Yeah. I think Haiti, Dominican Republic is one of the greatest examples. One landmass divided into two places with totally different visions of what African history is, African reality and culture is. You know what I mean? And yet they are so similar. In their cultures, very similar in their cultures, and yet different in their mentalities just by the way that the government, the continued government of that nation, these said nations have taught them. You know what I mean? Right? So it's very, very important. Very important. When you're teaching somebody, you got to know where they came from. It's like this, right? When I teach students, and they could be all Black American, I still want to know what borough they're from. That shit is real to me.
Right.
You know?
Right.
That's real to me. I want to know if they're from, I need to know if they're from LA or if they're from Oklahoma. These are all different things.
Now, see, that goes into the science of language and culture.
Right.
So,
it's not really about what they are, it's the experience they come from. We need to know these things. Right. I think sometimes when we get knowledge of self, we're supposed to get used to devaluing them and saying that they don't count or anything like that. No, they don't have the same value that people put on them because we have knowledge of self. But they need to be known, especially when you're going to build with someone. Of course, though, I don't look at the guy and say he's an African American. No, that's the God. You know what I'm saying? Just like I say I go, look, I come from Puerto Rican culture. I end up talking about Puerto Rico more because people keep attacking me. You know, they keep attacking me. I'm not here talking about stuff. And look, they go, oh, you like this or like that. If people are around me, I'm talking about jazz and hip-hop more than anything else. Right. Even though I love salsa and I love Puerto Rican culture and I love all that. I have such a deep knowledge of it and the history, you know. But it depends on what people are devaluing, what we're dealing with, though, and what we have to educate on. You know what I'm saying? It's very important, you know. And it's something that needs to be dealt with. You know, we can't just.
Somebody from Medina speaks a different language.
Right.
Than somebody
Even in this nation, we find out where you came from, where you got the knowledge. That's why we do that. We do the root because we want to know what you came from. Like if you're saying, "Oh, you only got it in Medina, you never went nowhere else," then we're gonna be like, he might be testy about refinement. You know what I mean? Like, you know, he might get upset. You know what I mean?
Upset.
You don't want to use that word. You know what I mean? But it's the same thing, like, and that's the reason, you know, like we want to do that. And when you're looking at the 85, you're gonna understand, like, people don't get this, right? With some cultures, it may not be a thing. Like sometimes we know that, like, let's say Latinos, those coming from Caribbean or South America, right? They don't, especially South America, they don't have a connection to their African culture. That's already been hidden very well. The bits of African culture, but they don't even know, contrary to what people think, the image of lauding your indigenous roots is a thing in South America, but only in imagery. And they don't really teach you about this shit, so they don't really know about it. But when we talk about, let's say, a Latin Caribbean, someone from the Latin Caribbean versus, let's say, a Jamaican, let's just use that. We might assume that those Latin Caribbeans don't appreciate black culture or their blackness, but if we don't know where you're from, we also don't understand that Jamaicans have a heavy anti-black culture. That they have a heavy way of looking at themselves as not black. And that's what sprouted the Rastafarian movement. And that's what sprouted a lot of movements. So if you don't look at this stuff, and you're just assuming, oh, he's Jamaican though, and then like you finally learn about stuff, oh, it's just Rasta stuff, or maybe he might say some Rasta dumb stuff, or he likes reggae. You may not be understanding that he comes from a place where there is great oppression against blackness there too. You know what I'm saying? Let's not forget, look, one of the most famous albums, just an example, Bunny Wailer, right? When he went solo, one of his best albums, my favorite of his, is Blackheart Man, right? But Blackheart Man was they used to call the Rasta. He was like the boogeyman. I was like calling him the boogeyman. It was the Blackheart Man. So it wasn't like these things were embraced by the popular society or the culture. That's something that they wanted to push away. And that's how a lot of Rastafarian communities ended up in the outskirts. You know what I mean? So we assume that certain countries are down with black and they just need a little bit of knowledge. Nah, sometimes they need the whole works too. They need the whole works. You know? So it's always about knowing where people are coming from, what they know. And it's the same thing. It's just part of the student. You gotta know, you wanna spend time knowing what that person does. See, in this classroom, I don't get to pick the friends or people I find friendly or with talents and abilities that I find moldable and likable to me, and then make them a student. Like if I'm on the street. Because you're not going to make someone your student though if you don't trust them or you don't feel like you want to be with them all day. Like, he'll fade away. But here, there's a lot of people I teach that have a lifestyle that I don't do at all. Whether it could be something that they're coming out of, like a criminal lifestyle, and I didn't live that like that, or if they just live a life that I don't really relate to. Whether it could be different, I don't know, I'm just making stuff up, but like different sports, different mentalities, different musical likes, or whatever like that, right? All Jesus Christ, holy mystery God, if they like reggaeton and I have to teach them, you know what I mean? Oh my goodness, that hasn't happened yet though.
Besides the language and culture, because really, it's funny because you do not fuck with reggae.
Oh my god, yeah.
You do not at all.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but you know the language enough to kind
of course,
navigate through that, right?
Of course, yeah.
It's almost like the same thing, like the Moors are saying that, you know, we're not black.
Right.
So, and that's their language, and you got to know how to be able to navigate that as well. So language and culture, I mean, that's something that I'm super fascinated by. I've become fascinated by that.
It is. It really is. It really is. You know what I mean? And these are the things that are used against us, so we have to know how to deal with that. Obviously, with a Moor, we're not really going to be sitting here if they're going to be dealing with that and try to teach them if they don't want to teach. But these are new things. Until I heard that, I didn't know that there would be students that would come here, potential students, that thought that they weren't black if they look black as you. You know what I mean? And some of them were getting out of that Moor stuff, and they still had that thought process. So, you know, like, if you don't know, if you don't ask, I wouldn't know about that. You know what I'm saying? So it's very interesting. Asking and getting the intrigue into it is very important. And King, you said, I can't stand reggaeton drums. That's the whole point. It's reggaeton drum. It's only one. It's only one drum.
The dembo.
Yeah. The dembo. That's it. You know? It's funny. My daughter made like these little shorts, you know, the little TikTok shorts, and she made one with a reggaeton video, and I was like, oh, you got to do that one again. I said, remix.
We're not going to have that in this house.
I said, remix, you will do that video over again for your father, you know?
Oh, man.
I said it was a good video, just different track.
You must do your own research, as I did.
If Mecca did this.